The three suns of Dranaxi Prime had risen in perfect alignment for millennia. Today, the smallest sun, Kira, pulsed an angry red instead of its usual golden glow. In the central science complex, Chief Astronomer Veltana watched her instruments with growing horror. "The readings cannot be accurate," she whispered, her crystalline fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Run the calculation sequence again." Our assistant's faceted eyes dimmed with concern. "This is the 7th verification, Chief. Kira's core has begun collapsing at an exponential rate." Veltana's exoskeleton clicked as she straightened to her full 3-meter height. "Alert the High Council immediately. We have a maximum of 1 planetary cycle before total extinction level events begin." The Dranaxian High Council convened within the hour, their translucent crystalline forms reflecting prismatic light across the ancient chamber. High Councillor Zixtarl studied the projection hovering above the central table, a perfect representation of their 3 suns, with Kira's core visibly destabilizing. "Our options?" he asked, his voice resonating through the chamber. Minister of Technology Kel Vorum stepped forward. "We've initiated all 17 contingency protocols. The planetary shield network is at maximum capacity, but simulations show it will fail within 7 rotations once Kira begins shedding its outer layers." "Evacuation possibilities?" asked Councillor Mev Dura, her form shimmering with anxiety patterns. "Our colony worlds can accept perhaps 20% of our population," replied the Minister of Interplanetary Affairs. "The nearest suitable uninhabited world is 14 light cycles away, too far for mass evacuation with our current fleet capacity." Silence fell across the chamber. The Dranaxians, known throughout their sector for logical precision and emotional restraint, faced extinction with characteristic calculation. "The Stellar Alliance," suggested a junior councillor from the Outer Ring. Ambassador Cathal's crystalline form darkened with remembered humiliation. "I personally petitioned the Alliance Council. They have deemed our situation regrettably terminal and suggested we focus on preserving our cultural archives rather than our people." High Councillor Zixtarl rose to his full height, towers of crystal catching the light. "Have we become so insignificant to the galaxy? 3 million years of civilization to be abandoned because our sun's death is inconvenient to our allies." For the first time in 7,000 years of recorded council meetings, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the projection showing their world's impending doom. Finally, Communications Director Tyranny broke protocol by speaking without recognition. "There is one option we haven't considered. It violates 17 interstellar treaties, but those treaties will mean nothing if we're extinct." "Speak," commanded Zixtarl. "We broadcast on all frequencies, including primitive ones most species abandoned millennia ago. We send a plea for help without specific addressee, a desperate final call to the stars themselves." The suggestion was met with disbelief. The Dranaxians, proud members of the galactic community for thousands of years, reduced to sending primitive distress signals like castaways on a cosmic ocean. Yet what choice remained? 12 hours later, Tilari stood before the planetary transmission array. With a silent prayer to ancestors long crystallized in the ancient vaults, she activated the broadcast. The message was simple, devoid of Dranaxian formality or complex diplomatic protocols. Just 7 words, translated into every known language, and broadcast on frequencies so primitive most advanced civilizations had long ago stopped monitoring them. "Any species who can hear this, please help." The message travelled outward, racing past the borders of Dranaxian space, beyond Alliance territories, into regions unknown and unmapped. Most who received it responded with indifference or distant pity for a doomed world. But in one unremarkable solar system, on a blue-green planet the Dranaxians had never contacted, someone was listening. Dr. Elena Poteau rubbed her tired eyes as she monitored the deep space array at the International Astronomical Research Station in Antarctica. The midnight shift was always the loneliest, but she preferred the quiet. Her colleagues often joked that she communicated better with stars than people. A soft chime from her console interrupted her thoughts. The automated system had flagged an unusual signal pattern. Elena frowned, adjusting her headset. This wasn't cosmic background radiation or the usual pulsar rhythms she had catalogued for years. Computer, analyze signal pattern and determine point of origin, she commanded, her fingers already typing commands to enhance the reception. Signal pattern contains structured data consistent with artificial transmission. The AI responded. Point of origin, approximately 157 light-years from Earth, coordinates matching no known stellar body in current database. Elena's heart raced. She'd spent her career searching for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Could this actually be? The translation matrix she developed for her doctoral thesis activated, attempting to decode the signal. Minutes passed as algorithms tested thousands of linguistic patterns against the incoming data stream. Then, with startling clarity, words appeared on her screen. Any species who can hear this, please help. Our world is dying. 3 days later, the Dranaxian High Council reconvened in the central chamber. Hope had faded since the desperate transmission, replaced by practical matters of selecting which 20% of their population would escape. Communications Director Tyranny entered the chamber, her crystalline form vibrating in a pattern the others hadn't seen in decades. Excitement. High Counselor, we've received a response to our distress call, she announced. The chamber erupted in harmonic tones of disbelief. From which Alliance world? Asked Zixtal. From no Alliance world, Tyranny replied. The signal originates from an unregistered system in the Galactic Rim. A species calling themselves humans from a planet called Earth. She activated the central projector. A simple audio message played through the chamber's resonators. We received your distress call. We're coming to help. Hold tight. Silence fell across the council. This is... Ambassador Cathal searched for the appropriate word. Unexpected. Minister of Science Tana's analytical mind immediately assessed the situation. What do we know of these humans? Tyranny displayed the results of her hurried research. Almost nothing. Their world doesn't appear in any Alliance database. Based on their transmission technology, they've barely achieved rudimentary space travel. Their world has never been contacted by any known spacefaring civilization. And yet they responded, mused High Counselor Zixtal, when even our oldest allies abandoned us. They can't possibly help us, scoffed the Minister of Defense. Their technological development appears thousands of years behind our own. This is likely some miscommunication or false hope. Tyranny's form shimmered with uncertainty. Perhaps, but they've already sent 2 additional transmissions requesting technical specifications of our sun's condition and planetary defense systems. Their questions are surprisingly insightful. Ambassador Cathal's crystalline appendages clicked thoughtfully. What manner of species answers a desperate plea from strangers with immediate offers of assistance? It defies logical behavior models. We should prepare to receive them, Zixtal decided. Even if their help proves futile, we would be remiss not to acknowledge such a gesture. On Earth, Dr. Elena Patel stood before the hastily assembled International Space Council, the Dranaxian message playing on screens around the chamber. "You're absolutely certain about the translation?" asked General Williams. "Yes," Elena replied firmly, "and about the danger they're in. Their sun is collapsing in a way ours never would. They have weeks, not years." "What exactly do you expect us to do, Doctor?" asked the Chinese representative. "We barely have reliable transportation to Mars." Elena smiled. "Actually, I've already spoken with Dr. Takahashi about his experimental FTL drive. If we retrofit the ISS Arms cargo vessel—" "That's theoretical technology," protested the European delegate. "So was television once," Elena replied calmly. "We have a choice to make right now. Do we want humanity's first contact with alien life to be remembered as the time we said, 'Sorry, too difficult'?" The room fell silent. "I volunteer to lead the mission," she added. "Who's with me?" The Dranaxian Orbital Monitoring Station detected the anomaly 2 weeks after the human's message. A ripple in spacetime appeared at the edge of their system, followed by a vessel unlike anything in their extensive database of known ships. "Magnify," ordered Commander Ulvex, his crystalline fingers tapping nervously against the control panel. The view screen displayed a vessel that defied conventional design logic. It appeared to be a repurposed cargo hauler with mismatched hull sections and hastily retrofitted engine modules glowing in unusual cobalt blue. Crude stabilizers had been added to the exterior, seemingly as afterthoughts. By any reasonable standard, the ship should not have been capable of faster-than-light travel. "Scan for life signs," Ulvex commanded. "Scanning complete," replied his sensor officer, detecting approximately 30 organic signatures. "Carbon-based, bipedal, oxygen breathers." The communications array chimed. "They're hailing us," announced the communications specialist, surprise evident in her harmonic voice patterns. "On screen," ordered Ulvex. The image of a small bipedal being appeared. It had dark skin, rounded features, and lacked any crystalline structures. 2 dark eyes looked out with startling intensity. "This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Salvation. We received your distress call and have come to help." The being's mouth moved in alien patterns as the translation matrix converted her speech. Ulvex hesitated before responding. "This is Commander Ulvex of Dranaxi Prime Orbital Command. Your assistance is unexpected. Our scientists did not believe your species capable of interstellar travel." The human's face contorted into what the translation matrix identified as an expression of amusement. "We weren't, until about 10 days ago. We made some improvements on the fly." "Improvements?" echoed Ulvex incredulously. "You achieved faster-than-light capability in less than 2 weeks." "We had theoretical models," Captain Rodriguez replied. "Your distress call gave us a reason to bypass the usual testing phases. Permission to dock? We've brought engineers, physicists, and evacuation specialists." Ulvex transmitted the request to the High Council, who granted immediate approval. Within hours, the human vessel was secured in the main docking bay of the orbital station. The Dranaxian welcoming delegation, led by Ambassador Cathal, assembled in the docking chamber. At 3 meters tall with translucent crystalline bodies that caught and refracted light in dazzling patterns, they presented an imposing sight. The airlock cycled open. Captain Rodriguez led her team onto the station, flanked by a diverse group of humans carrying equipment cases. The Dranaxians expected signs of fear, or at least hesitation upon facing their towering crystalline forms. Instead, the humans moved forward with confident strides. Ambassador Cathal. Captain Rodriguez approached the tallest Dranaxian. Dr. Elena Petal detected your signal and led our response team. She gestured to a human female who stepped forward with a respectful nod. You crossed dangerous space to aid strangers, Cathal observed, his voice resonating with confusion. For what purpose? Dr. Patel exchanged glances with Captain Rodriguez before answering. Because you asked for help. Surely your government expects compensation or alliance benefits, pressed Cathal. Our governments don't even know we're here yet. Rodriguez replied with a slight smile. We didn't have time for bureaucracy. This was a volunteer mission. The Dranaxian delegation's crystalline forms vibrated in harmonic patterns, indicating deep confusion. The concept of risking lives for unknown entities without official sanction or promise of reward violated every principle of logical conduct. Dr. Hiroshi Takahashi stepped forward, unfolding a holographic display of the Dranaxian sun. We've analyzed your star's destabilization pattern during our journey. We have several potential approaches, but we'll need to move quickly. Ambassador Cathal's faceted eyes studied the assembled humans. You truly believe you can save our world? Dr. Patel's expression softened. We don't know if we can, but we're going to try everything possible. She extended her small hand toward the towering crystal being. Now, let's get to work. Your clock is ticking. The grand chamber of the Dranaxian Science Ministry hummed with tension. Floating holographic displays showed the deteriorating sun from multiple perspectives, each projection more alarming than the last. Dranaxian scientists stood in rigid formations, their crystalline bodies reflecting the ominous red glow of the solar projections. Dr. Elena Petal moved through the data streams, her small human form dwarfed by the towering aliens. Behind her, Dr. Hiroshi Takahashi analyzed energy output patterns, while Captain Rodriguez conferred with her engineering team in low, urgent tones. We've reviewed your evacuation plans, Elena announced to the gathering. Even with our ship assisting, we could only save a fraction of your population. Chief Scientist Veltana's crystalline form darkened with resignation. We have accepted this reality. Our priority now is preserving our genetic and cultural heritage. Unacceptable, Rodriguez interjected, stepping forward. We didn't come this far to manage your extinction. The chamber filled with the harmonic tones of Dranaxian surprise. Veltana regarded the human captain with faceted eyes that reflected multiple images of Rodriguez back at herself. Your determination is admirable, but even your species cannot alter stellar physics, Veltana responded. Takahashi looked up from his calculations. Actually, we might not need to. His fingers danced across his tablet as he transmitted data to the central projection system. Your sun isn't dying in the conventional sense. It's undergoing a phase transition we theorized, but never observed. The holographic display transformed, showing energy patterns cascading through the solar model. The Dranaxian scientists leaned forward, their crystalline bodies vibrating with sudden interest. This energy signature, Takahashi continued, suggests your sun is shifting to a different quantum state. The resulting explosion would indeed destroy your planet, but the energy released could potentially be harnessed. Harnessed? How? Demanded Veltana. Elena stepped into the center of the projection. We create a deflection shield using the sun's own energy against itself, a feedback loop that stabilizes the transition. The human engineering team unveiled their design, a network of energy collectors positioned at specific points around the Dranaxian sun. The collectors would absorb the massive energy spike during the phase transition, channeling it through specially designed conduits to power planetary shield generators. This would require conversion of our entire defense fleet, observed War Minister Zakrath, his voice resonating with doubt. Our ships would be permanently transformed into these collector devices. Yes, confirmed Rodriguez. Every available vessel. You ask us to sacrifice our defensive capabilities. Leave ourselves vulnerable to rival systems. Zakrath's crystalline form pulsed with alarm patterns. Dr. Usha Okafor, the human astrophysicist, stepped forward. Her dark fingers traced the projected path of the solar shockwave. With respect, Minister, your defensive capabilities won't matter if your planet is reduced to space dust. The chamber fell silent. The War Minister's faceted eyes studied the small human female who had spoken with such direct clarity. The calculations show a 56.7% probability of success, offered Veltana after reviewing the data. We've achieved more with less. Rodriguez replied with a confidence that bewildered the Dranaxians. We need to begin immediately. Your fleet reconfiguration will take at least 3 days, and we have perhaps 5 before the sun reaches critical transition phase. High Councillor Zix Tarl, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. You would risk your lives on a plan with such a narrow margin of success. Elena exchanged glances with her fellow humans before turning back to the council. On Earth, we have a saying, where there's life, there's hope. We don't measure the value of lives against the difficulty of saving them. The Dranaxian leader's crystalline forms resonated with a harmonic pattern the humans' translators couldn't interpret. Finally, Zix Tarl gave the command that would commit their civilization to the humans' audacious plan. Begin fleet conversion immediately. All resources at your disposal. The central shipyard of Dranaxi Prime buzzed with unprecedented activity. Massive crystalline vessels, once the pride of the Dranaxian defense fleet, hung suspended in construction cradles as both species worked feverishly to convert them into solar energy collectors. The normally methodical Dranaxians had abandoned their carefully sequenced work protocols in favor of the humans' more intuitive approach. Chief Engineer Maria Santos wiped sweat from her brow as she calibrated the energy absorption matrix on the flagship. Beside her, Dranaxian Engineer Prevail observed with fascination. Your species operates with remarkable efficiency despite your chaotic methods. Prevail noted, his crystalline appendages adjusting a power coupling with microscopic precision. Maria laughed. Humans work best under pressure. Give us an impossible deadline and inadequate resources, and watch us perform miracles. Across the shipyard, Captain Rodriguez and Ambassador K. Thal monitored the sun's deterioration. The massive star pulsed an angry crimson, violent flares extending millions of kilometers into space. Another severe emission spike, K. Thal observed, his voice resonating with concern. The transition is accelerating beyond projected parameters. Rodriguez turned to her communication device. All teams, we need to accelerate deployment. The window is closing faster than anticipated. In the orbital testing facility, the first prototype collector underwent its initial power test. Dr. Takahashi stood behind a protective barrier with Dranaxian scientists as the device activated, extending energy collection arms toward the simulated solar flare. For 30 seconds, the collector functioned perfectly, its crystals glowing with absorbed energy. Then, without warning, the entire assembly shattered in a blinding explosion. When emergency systems cleared the smoke, 2 human technicians lay injured alongside a Dranaxian engineer. Her crystalline form cracked in multiple places. News of the failure spread quickly. The High Council convened an emergency session, with many arguing for a return to evacuation preparations. Captain Rodriguez arrived at the council chamber, bandages covering burns on her right arm. The prototype failed, announced War Minister Zakrath. We have wasted precious time on an impossible solution. It wasn't impossible, it was imperfect, Rodriguez countered. We've identified the structural weakness. The collector couldn't handle the energy density. Science Minister Veltana's crystalline form flickered with skepticism. Even if we redesign, we lack sufficient time for proper testing protocols. Then we test as we build. Elena interjected, entering the chamber with Dr. Takahashi. We've modified the collector design to incorporate Dranaxian resonance crystals in the absorption matrix. It will strengthen the energy containment field. This approach violates all safety parameters, objected Veltana. The risk of catastrophic failure is less than the certainty of extinction if we do nothing, Elena completed. Sometimes you have to run toward the fire to escape it. The second prototype test ended in another explosion, more violent than the first. The third test claimed the lives of 2 human engineers and a Dranaxian technician. With each failure, more Dranaxians returned to evacuation preparations, their logical minds calculating the diminishing probability of success. After the third disaster, the High Council formally requested the humans abandon their efforts and assist with evacuation instead. They found Elena alone in the laboratory, surrounded by holographic debris analysis, her eyes red from exhaustion and tears. Your courage is admirable, said Councillor Zixtarl gently, but your council must recognize when a path is closed. Elena looked up, pushing back her dishevelled hair. That's not how humans operate, Councillor. We don't accept no-win scenarios. Your determination defies logic, Zixtarl observed. Logic didn't build civilizations, Elena replied. Stubborn hope did. She manipulated the holographic display, revealing a completely redesigned collector. This is attempt 4. We've integrated the energy pattern from all 3 failures. The collector doesn't fight the energy surge, it dances with it. As she spoke, a message arrived from the testing facility. The 4th prototype had achieved stability at 43% capacity. Young Dranaxians, inspired by the humans' persistence, began volunteering for the integration teams. They wore red bands on their crystalline arms, the colour of human blood, as symbols of this strange, contagious hope. The redesigned collectors worked. Within 48 hours, 17 vessels had been successfully converted and positioned around the Dranaxian sun. Energy collection rates exceeded theoretical predictions, and for the first time since the crisis began, a fragile optimism spread through the population. In the Central Command Center, Captain Rodriguez studied the holographic display showing the shield network taking shape. The collectors glowed blue against the angry red of the destabilizing star. Dr. Takahashi approached with a data tablet, his expression grave. We have a problem, he said quietly, ensuring only Rodriguez could hear. The control system can't be fully automated. Someone needs to manually calibrate the energy flow during the peak transition phase. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. How bad is the radiation exposure for whoever does that job? Takahashi didn't need to answer. His silence confirmed what she already suspected. I'll do it, she said. Maya, no, Elena interjected, having overheard. You're needed to coordinate the deployment, I showed. Their argument was interrupted by Chief Science Minister Veltana entering with the High Council. The Dranaxians' crystalline forms reflected the blue emergency lights, creating an ethereal effect. We've analysed the control system requirements, Veltana announced. A manual operator is required at the central node during peak transition. The Council is preparing a selection protocol from our eldest citizens." "That won't be necessary," came a quiet voice from the doorway. Lieutenant James Chen, the navigation officer from the Salvation, stepped forward. The young man had worked tirelessly since their arrival, rarely speaking, but always present whenever a difficult task needed completion. "I've studied the control schematics," he continued. "The system requires human reaction speeds combined with an understanding of Dranaxian crystalline technology. I've worked more closely with both than anyone else on the team." "Lieutenant, this isn't your responsibility," Rodriguez began. Chen smiled slightly. "With respect, Captain, that's exactly what it is. We came here to help. This is how I can help most effectively." The Dranaxian Council members vibrated in their communication frequency, their translator rendering their private conversation. These humans continue to defy logical behavior models. They compete for the opportunity to sacrifice themselves for strangers. Elena stepped forward. "James, there must be another way. Maybe if we reconfigure the—" "We don't have time," Chen interrupted gently. "The star enters transition phase in 17 hours. This is the solution we have." That evening, Chen prepared in the meditation chamber provided by the Dranaxians. He was surprised when Tyranny, the communications director who had sent the original distress call, entered with a small crystalline object. "This is traditionally given to those undertaking the final journey," she explained, placing it in his hands. The crystal caught the light, refracting it into patterns that seemed to contain images, Dranaxian children, crystal spires reaching toward the sky, ocean waves breaking on crystalline shores. "It contains memories," Tyranny explained. "So you may know what you are saving." Chen turned the crystal, watching the memories of a world he would never truly know. "Where I come from, we have a saying, 'Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for friends.'" "But we are not friends," Tyranny observed. "We were strangers until days ago." Chen smiled. Humans don't draw that distinction when lives are at stake. Word of Chen's decision spread throughout the Dranaxian cities. As he made his final preparations, thousands of Dranaxians lined the pathway to the launch bay, their crystalline forms bowed in a gesture of profound respect. Each had brought a tiny memory crystal, placing them along his path so that each step he took illuminated more memories of the world he was saving. At the entrance to the shuttle, Chen turned to his fellow humans. Captain Rodriguez saluted, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Tell them," Chen said softly, "when they ask why we came, tell them it's just what humans do. We answer when called." The day of the solar transition arrived with eerie calm. Lieutenant Chen had been at the central control node for 6 hours, making final adjustments to the collection grid. His small station orbited dangerously close to the churning, unstable star, protected only by experimental shielding that the team had barely had time to test. From the planetary command center, the remaining humans and Dranaxian leaders monitored his progress. The main view screen showed Chen's face, calm despite the apocalyptic red glow suffusing his control room. Energy collection network at 94% efficiency. Chen reported, his voice steady despite the interference crackling through the transmission. Shield generators standing by. Elena gripped the edge of the console. "James, the stellar core is showing pre-collapse oscillation. You need to activate the collectors now, before." A blinding flash overwhelmed the sensors. When the screens cleared, the Dranaxian sun had begun its transition, its outer layers peeling away in massive solar flares that dwarfed the collectors. Energy surge exceeding predicted levels. Called out a Dranaxian technician, her crystalline form vibrating with alarm patterns. On screen, Chen worked frantically, his hands dancing across controls as warnings blared around him. Redirecting excess through secondary conduits. Initiating planetary shield now. Across Dranaxi Prime, massive shield generators activated simultaneously. A shimmering blue barrier formed in the upper atmosphere, spreading like ice crystallizing across water. In orbit, the converted fleet glowed brilliant azure as they channeled the sun's fury toward the protective shield. Shield integrity at 70% and holding, reported War Minister Zakrath, wonder evident in his resonant voice. In the control room, Chen's station shuddered violently as another solar flare struck. Warning lights cascaded across his controls. Station shielding failing, he reported, his voice eerily calm. Primary controls overheating. Switching to manual override. "James, get out of there," Rodriguez commanded. "The automated systems can—" "Negative, Captain," Chen interrupted. "Automation just failed. I need to stay and balance the energy flow manually, or the entire grid collapses." On the view screen, they watched as Chen removed his protective gloves to manipulate delicate crystal controls with his bare hands. The skin on his fingers blistered almost immediately from the heat. "Lieutenant, this is suicide," Ambassador Cathal said, his translator barely catching the complex harmonics of his distress. Chen's smile was strained but genuine. "Sometimes that's the price. The shield is holding, isn't it?" Before anyone could respond, a proximity alert sounded. Tilari's crystalline form brightened with confusion as she checked the long-range sensors. "Multiple vessels entering the system," she announced. "Configurations match. Stellar Alliance signatures." The command center fell silent as the first transmission came through. The holographic projection showed the Stellar Alliance president, his multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. "Dranaxi Prime, this is President Korvax. We have dispatched a relief fleet to assist with your situation." Rodriguez stepped forward, her expression hard. "Your timing is remarkable, Mr. President. You refused their plea when it mattered, but now you arrive to witness their salvation." The President's translator struggled to convey his discomfort. New information suggested the crisis might be addressable with unconventional approaches. "We come to coordinate the multi-species relief effort." "You mean you came because humans proved it possible," Elena said quietly. The President's multiple eyes blinked in the rapid pattern that his species used to indicate acknowledgement of an uncomfortable truth. "Your methods violated all predictive models. The galaxy has taken notice of humanity today." As more Alliance ships arrived, a miracle occurred at the control station. Lieutenant Chen discovered that by recalibrating the resonance frequencies of his station's crystals, he could create a protective bubble around the control center. Though severely injured, he maintained consciousness long enough to complete the shield stabilization. "He's alive," announced the medical officer monitoring his life signs. "Barely, but alive." Across Dranaxi Prime, the shield held firm against the solar storm. And across the galaxy, word began to spread of the small, determined species who had answered a desperate call that everyone else had ignored. 6 months after the solar transition, Dranaxi Prime flourished under skies made vibrant by their transformed sun. What had once threatened extinction now bathed the crystalline cities in prismatic light that danced across buildings and reflected from the faceted bodies of its people. The Dranaxian sun pulsed with stable, renewable energy that their scientists now harnessed to power a technological renaissance. In the Great Hall of Remembrance, a ceremony unlike any in Dranaxian history was underway. The massive chamber, typically reserved for honouring ancient Dranaxian heroes, now centred around 5 humans. Lieutenant James Chen, finally recovered from his injuries, stood beside Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Patel, Dr. Takahashi, and Chief Engineer Santos. Their small forms were dwarfed by the towering crystalline statues of Dranaxian historical figures, yet every eye in the chamber focused on them. High Councillor Zixtarl approached, his crystalline form gleaming with ceremonial adornments. He carried a large crystal sphere that pulsed with inner light, constantly shifting in colour and pattern. This eternal memory crystal has recorded only 7 events in our 30,000 years of civilization. Zixtarl's voice resonated through the chamber. Today, we add an 8th, the day humanity answered when no one else would. The crystal flared, projecting images of the human ship arriving, the shield activating, and Chen at the controls during the solar transition. The memories played not as external recordings, but as emotional experiences, allowing everyone present to feel the despair, hope, determination, and ultimate triumph of those moments. In recognition of humanity's service to our people, the Stellar Alliance has formally acknowledged Earth's status as a spacefaring civilization. Zixtarl continued. All technology restrictions have been lifted. The stars are now truly open to your species. Ambassador Cathal stepped forward with 5 smaller crystals. These contain our most advanced scientific knowledge, propulsion systems, energy generation, medical technologies, freely given to help your world's development. Chen accepted his crystal with a slight smile. We didn't come for rewards. We know, Cathal replied. That is precisely why you deserve them. After the ceremony, on the observation deck overlooking the Dranaxian capital, Elena stood with Tilari watching the sunset paint the crystal spires in shades of gold and amber. Your distress call has changed more than just our 2 worlds, Elena remarked. The entire alliance has been transformed. Tilari's form shimmered with agreement. Indeed, 3 interspecies rescue missions launched last month alone. The Galaxians evacuated an entire colony from a volcanic moon without being asked. They called it acting in the human spirit. Elena laughed. And the treaty negotiations? Any progress? The Human Dranaxian Accord has been ratified by 17 systems, Tilari confirmed. Its preamble, the answer when called, has become something of an interstellar motto. As they spoke, a notification chimed on Elena's communicator. Another distress signal, this time from a research outpost in a distant nebula. Before she could respond, notifications lit up across the station as both human and Dranaxian crews volunteered for the rescue mission. The next morning, as the human delegation prepared to depart, some returning to Earth as ambassadors, others remaining to continue working with the Dranaxians, Captain Rodriguez received a final message from the Stellar Alliance president. The galaxy has monitored your species for centuries, the message read. We observed your wars, your environmental struggles, your divisive politics. We calculated you would destroy yourselves before reaching the stars. We never measured what truly matters. Your capacity for compassion, your refusal to abandon strangers, your willingness to risk everything to answer a call for help. Perhaps we have been measuring civilization incorrectly all along. As their ship departed Dranaxian space, Rodriguez looked back at the now stable sun and the crystalline world it illuminated. Ready for our next call? She asked her crew. Every human hand raised in response.